Mr. Mills, the opposition's complained a lot about the omnibus bill and the way it got certain environmental checks and balances. We've heard a little from the old progressive conservative wing of the party, from Mr. Siddon and Mr. Fraser. You're from the reform wing of the party. I'm wondering if the government, this decision to get rid of the round table and the government's handling of the environment has caused you to reconsider or even drop your support for the Harper government?
Well, Roger, I don't really see this as a political issue. As you know, my history would say that I've always been really concerned about the environment, and obviously tried to make that as clear as possible in my 15 years down here as a member. And truly believe that environment and the economy are tied, that they should be dealt with, you know, in a very important way, that's the lifeblood. I mentioned the brand name internationally. I've been doing quite a bit internationally. And when I hear Canada mentioned, it's quite often with a bit of a slur, and I don't like that. I'm a proud Canadian, and that's what's most important. I think this issue is beyond party. I think it's about environment and the economy. And I think that the nonpartisan way that the round table presented issues, that the government should have said, hey, this is vital, this is critical to our future economy and environment, jobs, everything that's really important to us as Canadians. And I'm very disappointed that they would take a move like this. But, you know, in terms, I don't really look at it politically anymore. Fortunately, I can look at it now from my true belief that environment, economy, that's what it's about. There's a pile of Canadians out there that have no political ties at all who care about the environment. They go camping, they go fishing, they go hunting, they go out to just enjoy a nice walk in the park. Those are the Canadians that I believe the National Roundtable spoke for, the grassroots people who really cared. And so I don't see it as politics, Roger. I see it as being just common sense for the good of all Canadians, that we care about the environment and our economy.
With due respect, your claim that this is sort of beyond politics, your being here is political. The decision, the budget bill, the treatment of the environment is a political issue. Is Stephen Harper wrong?
Stephen Harper puts other priorities, I think, ahead of the environment, and I think that's a mistake. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if I didn't really strongly believe that the Roundtable was doing an excellent job. There was a time when I wasn't too sure about the Roundtable under former chairs and so on. If you go back in the record, you'll find that. But hey, being part of it has just convinced me about the work. The people that work there, the scientists that have input into it. Wow, it's not politics. It's just about common sense. It's about my kids, my grandkids. It's about the future of this country. And it's about how we look internationally. That's so important. So, you know, I'm disappointed when I hear the Prime Minister in Paris today not mentioning something about environment. I mean, it's important. It's important to Europeans. They already are there. They already have roundtables. The Americans and American states already have roundtables. The Chinese, just in their recent 12th five-year plan, put environment #1. Man, they destroyed their environment, and now they realize the people care about that. So I think Canadians care about it, and I really think that we have to speak out. So I'm not here as a politician. I don't run for politics. I'm not running for anything. I just care about the environment.
Margot McDermott of CBC.
Mr. Mills, of course I have to follow up on that. Do you feel that the Roundtable ran afoul of the government's overall ideology or policies? I mean, what's your sense of why they really have axed it?
Well, obviously, some of the politicians read only certain words. So we always were very balanced in our approach. And we said, you know, okay, carbon. What about carbon? Well, we said that there should be some way of monitoring that to reduce the carbon footprint, to move to a low-carbon economy. The world is moving to a low-carbon economy. And whether we, you know, we're going to have trade barriers put on us. We're going to have all kinds of things happen to us if we are an environmental laggard. So it's really important. So how do you do that? Well, do you do it cap and trade? Do you do it by a price? Obviously, some of the ministers chose to read only one part of the report. That's not how it should be. That's not how the Round Table did it. The Round Table said you need to look at all of this and develop a vision for a low-carbon economy. How are we going to get there? The report that's coming out in the next couple of months will be the final report in this in this climate prosperity. How can Canadians benefit from going to a low-carbon economy? There's all kinds of technology we can develop and sell to the world. There's entrepreneurs out there ready to do it. The government needs to support those people. That's what our report said. Didn't say put a price on carbon. Didn't say go to cap and trade. It said here are all your options. Here's what the world is doing. Get on it. Get a vision, long term. Where are we going?
And what discombobulates me too is that it's just economics 101. If you price in the externalities, which we've learned to do, in terms of waste management, we do it with recycling, etc. Well, with GHG emissions, the same thing. You price in the externalities through some form of carbon pricing, and I think 6 of the 10 provinces, if not more, have some form of carbon pricing, be it in Nova Scotia, what it is called an efficiency levy on electricity. In Alberta, they have a different form, which I think more cap and trade. It's just economics 101, and to raise this as Minister Baird did, as first is inaccurate, but secondly, if putting aside the carbon tax, talking about pricing the externalities of the environment, that's just economic good sense. You have to know the full cost of something, and rising GHGs will impose a cost. You have to factor that in.
Can I have a follow-up? And maybe Mr. Mills or some, you could answer this as well, or somebody else. I mean, really what I hear you describing is a government that's sort of on this track and just about everybody else on this track. I mean, do we have sort of an ideological gap here between what the Roundtable was saying and what you and what the government is saying or thinks?
Well, I think what's most important is what Canadians are saying, and like I say, whether it's industry, whether it's academics, whether it's politicians, and it doesn't matter what stripe, are all saying you got to have this balance. It's all about balance between the environment and the economy. And as Mark says, we're going to pay a price if we don't get that balance. And the Round Table, as an outside advisory group, I mean, who does it? You know, I've always said that if you're smart, you surround yourself with really smart people. And if you're dumb, you surround yourself with a bunch of cheerleaders. We don't need cheerleaders. What we need are smart people. And in the Round Table, a collection of, from all walks of life, all different political stripes, didn't matter, but they were pretty smart people. I've become very impressed with the colleagues that I've come in contact with, and more important, the staff that are there, dedicated young people to getting the facts out there. It doesn't matter what side they are, that's so important.
Now you make us sound old, but in our report on the low carbon economy, what surprised me and shocked me was that in many of the statistical analysis, Canada's dropped in its ratings vis-a-vis other countries. So when you say, are we off, is there a sort of divide within Canada? Certainly I think when you talk globally, other countries are moving aggressively to low carbon economies, and Canada, for one reason or another, is stalled out right now.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
I'd like to say something about the ideological gap. I think we have to be concerned not only about the ideological gap that is evident within the context of Canadian politics, we also have to be very concerned about the ideological gap between Canada and most of the rest of the world. Bob mentioned the fact that Canada was mentioned with a slur at meetings that he has attended. Just a few weeks ago, the Swedish government held a 40th anniversary conference of the Stockholm Conference on the Environment of 1972, which put environment on the global agenda. and they invited me as a guest since I was one of the veterans of, I'm a relic, one of the veterans of Stockholm. And I was constantly buttonholed by delegates. There were ministers and others there from 70 countries, buttonholed by delegates asking me, what, Jim, has happened to your country? What has happened to Canada? We used to be able to depend on you as a leader on these issues. Now you have become a laggard. You are fighting everything we want to achieve in international fora. And they pressed me for answers. What has happened? And all I could say was that that with our current Prime Minister, unless he changes his views, the situation is going to get worse before it gets any better, at least worse for the next 3 years.
I think also there has to be a recognition of the costs that are involved in climate change. I spent nearly 4 decades in an industry that is probably at the forefront of paying for the costs that arise from the increasing number of extreme weather events. I spent 4 decades in the insurance, reinsurance industry, and I did a lot of work on the impacts of climate change on the industry. And the graphs that I developed and that others developed of the worldwide increasing costs from extreme weather events is absolutely staggering. We might think it will cost us something to take measures which are going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are affecting the climate. But what are the costs that we are all going to pay, every single one of us, if we do nothing about this and the extreme weather continues? With the rise in sea level, the disappearance of many small island states, the group OASIS, extreme weather events in summer, in winter, in Canada, in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in Australasia, these are incredible costs which have to be paid for by somebody. And ultimately, there's only one somebody who pays for it, and I'm looking at you.
We'll go to Gloria Galloway of the Globe Mail.
First of all, Mr. Mills, it's nice to see you back here. Secondly, I apologize for making you the man of the hour here. All our questions are going to you, but I couldn't get beyond what you just said about the cheerleader thing. I note that none of your former caucus colleagues are here doing what you're saying, and I can't believe that they're all 100%, in line with what the government is doing on the environment. Why do you think you're the person speaking out? Why are none of them saying that we disagree with what the government's doing on the environment?
That's a tough question, Gloria. Thanks. Anyway, I really think that, you have to have a passion. And I guess it could be said that I have maybe more passion than some others and don't mind saying what I think. I mean, I would have felt guilty not being here simply because I have that passion. I really believe that the National Roundtable presented a nonpartisan, scientific view of environment and the economy. I don't agree with Elizabeth a lot of times, but the point is that I know she's genuine of caring about the environment. I think that the people here know the importance of environment and the economy, tying them together and moving forward. I really mean that down the road, we're going to pay a price for not putting those two together. And I don't think it's, I don't think I'm doing the right thing for my fellow Canadians by not speaking out. Now, I can't speak for anyone else why they wouldn't be here. Maybe they're not here because Elizabeth organized this. I don't know. But I'm here not as a member of the Round Table, not as a political person. I'm here as a Canadian who cares about tying these together. And I saw this group as representing a really great advisory group to the government. And man, if I was the government, I would say I want all the advice I can get I just don't need people telling me everything I do is wonderful.
You're not only a former MP, you're actually from Alberta, and it's absolutely right that Mr. Harper and the government have said, look, if we don't go ahead with this budget, jobs will be lost. It'll affect the whole country, but certainly jobs will be lost in Alberta. It'll affect the Alberta economy. Are you at all concerned that by speaking out like this, you're going to be turning off the whole of Alberta? I mean, do you worry that you just lost Alberta?
Well, I think that some of the environmental studies and so on that go on have become really a gong show. So I agree with some of the things need to be streamlined. We can't operate under how we did things 30, 40, 50 years ago. We have the internet. We have so much more information out there. I think we should streamline a lot of things. So I agree with a lot of what the government is doing. But what I don't agree with is getting rid of the round table, which is an arm's length advisory group, not an antagonistic group, not somebody out trying to get media coverage, somebody there who really genuinely, and all the members, I can speak for all of them, say, and previous members as well, they were there because they cared about this issue. That's why they accepted the job. And so, you know, I think most Albertans care about the environment. I think that they really don't want the pollution that, say, we see in China. They don't want that. They care about it. But they also care about the economy, and they know that it's important that we don't just have one person wanting our oil, that we have a lot of people wanting it. That's good for all Canadians. That raises our tax dollars. That's about the economy. They're tied together. Why don't they double the pipeline? Why don't, you know, we have two-layered tankers. Why don't we have two-layered pipelines? Wouldn't that be a great solution to putting a pipeline somewhere? Like, there's answers that are economically strong, environmentally strong, but I don't hear anybody talking about that. And that bothers me a lot. So I don't think I'm alienating Albertans. I'm a proud Albertan. I'm glad I come from there.
Can I just add to your very first question? It's very clear, both provincially and federally, that there has been a diminution of democracy, centralization of power in both prime ministers and premiers' offices, and the role of the ordinary member has been lessened over time. And this started way back. This goes back to the time of Trudeau, and that's unfortunate. And that's, I think, the answer why more people aren't speaking out in the Progressive Conservative Caucus, or in the Conservative Caucus. I'm sure there are people there. I know of people within that caucus who are very, very supportive of the environment and the economy together. But this concentration of power and this lack of freedom for the average MP or MLA to speak is lamentable. And I think that's the main reason. It takes great courage. And you know that, and I think that's the reason there are people there, and we're counting, hopefully, on them being a silent sort of fifth column within the Conservative Party to say, this is a bad decision, let's reverse it.
We'll go to Martin, go to La Presse.
Mr. Ross, you touched on it a little bit. This government maintains that its priority is economic development. Maybe Mr. Ross, anyone, can you expand on why this government's environmental policy is of concern for economic development in your view?
As I said before, the issue of climate change is one that affects everybody. It affects individuals, it affects businesses. The frequency of extreme weather events, that has a major economic impact. You get a flood in a major city, that has an economic impact. You get hailstorms with increasing frequency, that has a major economic impact. You get an increase in major windstorms, that has an economic impact. Yes, there's some economic activity generated in the rebuilding and in the repair of structures, but you get a slowdown in the economy at the time of the event, and it's not just limited to Canada. You know, look what happened. I'm not saying earthquakes are anything to do with climate change, but you look what happened after the earthquake in Japan and the effect that had on automobile sales. The Japanese cars weren't available. They'd gone. The damage isn't limited just to the country in which the event occurs. The damage spreads itself worldwide. And I think to ignore the direct linkage between environment and economy is walking down a road that you don't know what's at the end.
Just to pick up on that, in Atlantic Canada, we've done quite a bit of studies on sea level rise. And we partnered the National Roundtable with the Royal Canadian Geographic Society and actually put out a map showing what would happen to the city of Halifax under the various scenarios. And the economic cost is huge because, at least in Atlantic Canada, we're a coastal, so you're affecting communities, you're affecting roads, you're affecting wastewater treatment, which will now be affecting sewage, you're affecting water plants, you're affecting everything out of this enormous cost. And as John said, we have now on our board Franklin, help me with Franklin, who keeps bringing to us that some of the buildings in flood areas or on sea level coastal communities will no longer be insurable because of the threat of climate change. And so the economic costs are staggering if we do nothing. And as John said, if we do something. And beyond climate change, there's other things that maybe Jim wants to elaborate on, but the two are inextricable. You cannot, your natural capital is your environment. Unless you preserve it, then you don't have an economy in the end. So it's a short-sighted emphasis that, unfortunately, not just the present government, but I find in provincial governments as well have, that the National Roundtable brought a longer perspective. Because politicians think of 2-3 years. I want to get reelected, you know, I'll promise a few jobs here and there I can deliver. I'm not too worried about the future. The National Roundtable was able to say, listen, look 20 years out, look 30 years out. What are you doing to the economy, and will the economy be there for your children and grandchildren? So it's such short-sighted thinking. I just get discombobulated by it. I don't know how to respond to it because it is short-sighted, economically short-sighted thinking. Anyone who says they're an economic genius when they take attitudes such as we've been seeing, with not just unfortunately the federal government, but I see it with provincial governments, are wrong. It's for political short-term reasons. It's not for long-term economic reasons. It's not economic good sense at all.
Just to add to that, I mean, if you think about the report on the Arctic, the Prime Minister says the Arctic is really important, permafrosts are disappearing, etc. There was a great report, received really well, downloaded by thousands, about the Arctic and what we need to think about from a social, environmental, economic perspective. How important is that? The report on 2050. How do Canadians get to 2050? The whole climate prosperity, 6-part series on climate prosperity. How can Canadians prosper from going to a low-carbon economy? It's not about, you know, hey, we're all for the environment and, you know, we're gonna have just green. We're all gonna live in caves and not have electricity and not drive cars anymore. It's not about that. It's about how can we benefit. How can we develop technologies by Canadians that we can sell to the world? More important, if we don't do that sort of thing, they're going to start saying, hey, you know, we'll become the seals. You know how that goes. You know, ducks can become baby seals all of a sudden. And when we go that way and get that reputation, wow, they can slam us big time economically. And the world is capable of doing that. It's all about taking care of your own country.
Or look at water, and 80% of the water of Canada is used in our natural resource industries. If that water's not there, those industries grind to a halt. We're seeing in southern states, in agriculture, which I come from an agricultural area, California, vast sections there will no longer be able to produce crops the way they do now. That is a huge economic impact. And we see that our study on water by the National Roundtable looked at central Canada and found similar stresses on water by various industries, be it the potash mining, be it agriculture, etc. They need water. That water has to be sustainable. So in many ways it affects the economy.
Back in 2001, Paul Martin, who was then finance minister, asked the National Roundtable to develop a national brownfield remediation strategy for Canada. Why did we need one? Because in the past century, we had basically ignored the environment when we were doing our manufacturing, our construction. The pollutants that were put into the earth over the previous century now had to be removed because we recognized that there was serious danger to individual Canadians from contamination. What is the cost now of cleaning up what was left from the past? That's an example of how ignoring the environment for the sole benefit of economic development is going to cost you in the future. And I think that that example of brownfields will be replicated in other areas when you're looking at climate change, when you look at the melting of the ice in the Arctic. You're going to have a tanker route going through the Northwest Passage probably within the next decade. What will it cost if the proper conditions aren't put into place to prevent any kind of spill there? How much will it cost? Are the oil companies capable of dealing with an oil spill in the Arctic? I think right now the answer is no. And ignoring the environment purely to benefit the economy is going to cost you a heck of a lot more in the future than if you deal with it at the same time.
On that point, I would just like to add that I find it a bit distressing, and I think everyone should find it distressing, that after the experience of the last 20 to 40 years, we are still trying to persuade ourselves of the obvious fact that when the environment goes belly up, the economy follows. I was the chief inspector for the World Bank for 5 years at the turn of the century, and traveled around looking at projects that had been misconceived or misconstructed and at great environmental cost. And the world is populated with examples at the local and regional level of huge expenditures made on projects where the environment did go belly up and the project failed. The link between the two are inextricable. And looking to the future, you only need to exercise your imagination a bit. Think what will happen when the glaciers of Western Canada, which are already melting at a rapid rate, are hit over the next 38 years with temperature increases of, let's say, not 6 degrees, which is what the IEA projects, but say 3 degrees. The melt will be enormous. And think of what the disappearance of those glaciers will do to prairie agriculture. I mean, all of those rivers are rain-fed, are glacier-fed. And the impact on the prairies will be disastrous. Shortage of water coupled with increasing temperatures equals massive drought.
I think in your introductory remarks you said,
in
your introductory remarks you mentioned, I think, I don't need to misquote you, but I think it was something like, where is Brian Mulroney when you need him? Can you expand on that?
Well, you're not misquoting me. I did say that. You know, to be perfectly honest, at the time that he was in power, I didn't think that he was green enough. But in retrospect, I realize that he was a prize, a real prize from the point of view of the environment. He believed strongly in the importance of the environment. He understood to a very large degree the critical link between the environment and the economy. When it came to climate change at the 1988 atmospheric conference in Toronto, one of the original conferences, he made what, in my view, was the greatest speech on climate change that I had ever heard. I must say that I suspect that Elizabeth May had a hand in drafting it, but it was a great speech. And think of what he did. I mean, from acid rain to the, excuse me, ozone. To the ozone layer, to total non-denial about science. I mean, he appointed scientists galore. We had one of the best climate change scientific establishments in the world. We were leading the way in many areas. He didn't fire scientists when they said things that he didn't like, and they often did. And he didn't close down institutions, he created them. I meant it when I said, where is Brian Mulroney when we need him? And I hope that this generation of parliamentarians will produce another one fast.
I could throw in, where is Preston Manning when we need him? You probably never thought I could be this quiet, those of you who know me. But I promised myself in being nonpartisan. But I was talking to Bob earlier.
I can kick her.
Yeah, but you can kick. But Preston Manning is also someone who says we can't go forward with economic development without paying attention to natural capital. Living within our means economically and ecologically is, I think, something that I'm quoting from Preston Manning. It's not as though, and I would appeal to Stephen Harper to think, it's not a partisan issue. It should not be ideological. The environment is not his enemy. But if you're going to have economic development, you must ensure that you're not destroying the natural capital and the ecological systems globally that allow our survival.
Can I give one more very specific example? When the Minister of Environment visited the Diavik diamond mine, they told us that with a melting glacier, their ice roads would no longer be able to be open long enough for them to get supplies up there, and it was economically unfeasible for them to fly in the supplies. So if the opportunity for when they could use the ice roads closed even further, that diamond mine would not be there. And much of the northern communities depend upon those sorts of industries. So there is a very concrete example of how not caring for the environment will result in an economic downturn.
James Munson of iPolitics.
I think
we have to go to James.
I think that Canadians should understand that the demonization of the environment, the notion that it is the lethal enemy of the economy and jobs, is today a uniquely Canadian or North American phenomena. When you go to Europe, as I often do, and attend conferences there, or to Asia, you don't hear this nonsense. They have learned. They know. And you're talking to conservative governments in Britain, you've got the whole spectrum of politics in Europe, and they are agreed on this. It's only in North America, for reasons which I don't fully understand, that the demonization of the environment and these old notions that environment is the deadly enemy of the economy still prevail.
I think that perhaps the Prime Minister has forgotten that the name of the round table is not the National Round Table on the Environment or the Economy. It's the National Round Table on the Environment and the Economy.
Quite.
Right, well put.
Go ahead.
Go back to Mr. Mills for a second on the Alberta issue. You mentioned, small examples of how the oil industry could change if it took the roundtable's advice, the double pipeline, double hull thing. But what change would the oil industry undergo if it took, as a whole, if it took the roundtable's advice? Does it mean shrinking the energy industry in Canada? Does it mean growing slower? In as simple as possible.
Yeah, I don't see it growing slower. I think it's good for all Canadians. And I think what industry wants is certainty. They want leadership. They want to know where you want to go, and they'll go there. So I don't see industry as the enemy of the environment. They will do what the leadership says they should do, and they'll be quite happy with it. What they want is certainty. That's how they get investment. That's how they move forward. You know, when the Prime Minister of Korea put solar panels all over the Parliament buildings and his residence, that sent a message to the people. Hey, we got to care about this environment stuff, and alternate energy, low carbon. We got to send messages like that. That's what government needs to do. And then, hey, industry's right there. I don't see industry slowing down or opposing this. They want certainty, and right now they don't have it. And I think they want it. There's members of industry on the round table saying that, and the government needs to listen to that. That's why you need the round table. Get all those points of view from smart people saying, here's where you got to go, and there's the vision that you need to move on.
I just want to press the point, because it is sort of the boogeyman that the other side, as you see it, uses, is that if we try to protect the environment too much, this business won't be as lucrative. So you say that if the roundtable's advice was taken by the oil industry, the oil industry could still grow.
Well, sure, because innovators are going to be encouraged, entrepreneurs are going to establish the technologies. That's good for business. We sell those internationally. We get the reputation. That helps our trade. It's just good news. And but if you don't want to listen to any of that good news, or don't have an organization providing you with that, and let's face it, universities, they depend on government for grants. They're going to be cautious. Bureaucrats, well, bureaucrats are in little silos, and they fight with each other more than they care about bringing it all together, what's good for Canada. NGOs, well, some of them just, like I say, they want to live in a cave, and well, okay, good for them. I don't want to do that. I want a good, strong economy for me and future generations. So you know, to say that you can get it off the internet, I have a lot of trouble with getting all my information off the internet. And I just think it's a lot better to have human beings, Canadians from all walks of life, giving you that. And like I say, industry, if you ask them one thing, what do you want? Certainty. They want a long-term certainty, because most of those projects, 30, 40 years of life. So you don't invest in 30, 40 years if you don't know where you're going.
And I think the National Roundtable, its geniuses have brought together people like, in terms of the oil sands, the bitumen sands, whatever you want to call it, there's a different perspective in Eastern Canada than you have in Alberta. I've been informed by my colleagues in Alberta of the steps that have been taken in environmental protection. I've also raised the issue why there isn't adequate tracking of greenhouse gas emissions from the oil sands sector when we know from other sectors. And so there's a back and forth as we work together. And I think that's the roundtable was able, as an honest broker, to convene meetings in Alberta with the NGOs and with the various companies. Bob Page did a wonderful job, and they were viewed as a sort of honest broker who could do that. That will be lost, because there are very few other organizations that can do that. Bring these together so that we can move ahead in a unified fashion that does care for both the environment and the economy.
Max Paris of CBC.
This is for Elizabeth May. I know next week you're going to be introducing a bunch of amendments to the Bill C-38. Do you think one of the amendments will be to scratch the cutting of the NRTEE?
Well, first of all, I'm still very hopeful that the Speaker of the House will rule on my point of order that Bill C-38 is not a proper bill and reject it. We haven't heard the arguments, which I expect we'll be hearing today from the other opposition parties to my point of order. If we are not successful on the point of order to the Speaker to throw the bill out, I will be proposing amendments that the Speaker's office will rule which ones are in order and which ones aren't. But among the different opposition parties, because we're working together, my amendments are mostly substantive replacements of places where other parties are doing the deletions. Other parties are allowed to do deletions. Only the Green Party and the Bloc are in a position to put forward substantive new language. But one way or another, we'll be putting forward the changes to protect the National Roundtable if we're not successful in what I realize it's a very, very large thing to ask the Speaker of the House to throw out the budget implementation bill. But the precedents are there, and I hope he will.
Guys, we've run out of time. Thanks very much. Thanks for showing up. Thank you, Ms. May. And,
I think my colleagues will be able to be here if anyone wanted to ask us additional questions outside. Thank you all so much for coming, and thanks especially to my colleagues. As you all know, it wasn't an easy thing to ask so many very reputable, eminent people to come in from Alberta, from Toronto, from Nova Scotia. Thank you all.